So we have with us here this evening, I'm Tom Morris, Artistic Director of Bristol Vic, and was lucky enough to be able to work with these guys on this show. We have Carl Grose, who wrote it. Give us a wave, Carl. Audrey Brisson, who played Dea. Then we have the composing team, Tim Phillips and Marc Teitler. And some other members of the cast, Louis, who played Grinpayne, Gloria, who played Josiana, and Sean, who played Ursus. We also have with us Vicky Lord and Lizzie Kavanagh, as you can see. And the reason for that is that both when the show was in Bristol and when it was in London, it was sustained by the most extraordinary audience response. It was a real phenomenon for all of us involved in it. And both Vicky and Lizzie saw the show. How many times did you see the show in London, you guys?
I saw it 4 times.
I saw it 5, including closing night.
So we just thought we would represent this extraordinary audience that the show built up during the run in Bristol and in London in the conversation. And I just want to, I think most of us have been able to watch the stream, and those who haven't have been able to watch the film fairly recently. I just want to start by asking, really throwing it open and see what people felt. Louis, what did it feel like watching your younger self in the Bristol Old Vic? What did it feel like to relive that?
It always feels quite an emotional experience because it was a show that I invested so much in and made so many friends and met so many creative, talented people. And so to revisit the Bristol production was a real treat because there were things that I had forgotten having done the London one. And yeah, I guess it was quite nice to sort of see also how what I was doing compared to how it developed during, when we moved.
I'm just going to fire a question at you from Karen Hanley, who says, how did you find the character? I guess she means, how did you research it and create it rather than did you like the character?
Well, I mean, we did some sort of extensive work, you and I, Tom, on mapping out Grinpayne's sort of levels of pain. I remember we sort of associated each one with a part of the body, and I think that really did help with the mentality of where he was in the show and how he was emotionally towards different people. And so in that sense, I think that's really how I sort of discovered the character and how I found the part physically, I think.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I'm going to try and get everyone else involved. Audrey, what did it feel like watching your younger self?
God, it was a blast from the past. And I'd forgotten how bonkers the show is. It was truly crazy and wonderful. And honestly, I always knew that everyone was extremely talented, but I don't know, I didn't see how amazing.
You were blown away. You were blown away by us.
I was blown away.
Yeah.
I truly was going, oh my God, this is amazing. And it was a great experience. I loved that show. It just reminded me of the feeling backstage throughout the entire run. I never got tired of it, never got bored. It was great. It was quite
emotional in the rehearsal room as well, wasn't it? But Gloria, what did it feel like to you watching it again?
Oh God, I mean, yeah, I'm like Audrey, just bonkers. And like, did I really go there? And yes, we did. But again, like, I mean, just such a great company, and it's such a special show to me because, again, like Audrey said, like such a talented cast and creative team, and but I don't know, we created such a special thing. So
It was
to see that again was just, yeah, it's like going back in time and your heart exploding open again. And yeah, it was really special. Loved it.
Made me think about believing in impossible things, and how somehow when you get an ensemble who believe that together, you get the sort of focus that you had. Sean, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, mate. Well, I have to say that's the first time I've seen it, so I was a bit moist at the end of it.
Yeah,
it was truly special. I mean, I'm on record saying, and I knew this from auditions, Tom. Honestly, I remember getting the music through from the auditions and playing it through and going, oh, this music is beautiful. It's right up my passage, you know. And then coming into audition for you guys, and it just all felt right. And you know, since we developed the show together in this most cooperative environment, which again floated every part of my artistic being.
Well, a bit of problem with your mic. Sorry to interrupt. There's a bit of, I don't know whether
I don't know. Yeah,
quite fluffily going on. Yeah, try
that. Okay. Is that all right? Can you still hear me?
Quite a lot of interference.
I am on record as saying with BBC in Bristol when I was there, and also BBC London, that I do think this is the greatest piece of theatre I've ever done. I don't say that lightly. I genuinely believe this is the best show I've ever been involved with in every aspect. I loved it so much, and it needs to go on. And there's so much more life to this show, you know. And I got that having watched this tonight. It was the lasting memory I have. This has to go on again, you know. And I'm still too young to play the part. So I'm up for it again.
Sean, I don't think you are. I think you've passed it now.
Carl or Tim or Mark, what did it feel like for you watching it again?
It was great. It was really, you know, again, like everyone said, you forget how, you know, how hard, you know, particularly looking at, say, Audrey and Louis, just the stuff that you've got on you, you know, and they're not easy parts, you know. You're kind of playing these, you got a lot of stuff to contend with and sing that stuff and, you know, tell that story. So it was just, yeah, same as Sean, slightly moist, and at the end it's very it's really intense. It's a great kind of capture. We've only watched the kind of the foreshot, haven't we, Tom? But the kind of just at the end, seeing the editing job on it, and everyone's kind of, you know, massively emotional and sweaty and teary, and it's great. It's still got a great power to it.
Yeah. It's all about the music, isn't it, Tim and Mark?
I don't know about that, but it definitely struck me how much of the music was sort of magnetically drawn towards whoever happened to be inhabiting the character. You know, I remember we had a certain amount created before we ever went into rehearsal, which was a lot of the show, but so much more came in during the rehearsal process of making, particularly the Bristol version. And it just reminded me how much, how great a team it was in terms of the collaborators bringing themselves to each role, and how that informed Mark and I when we were developing the music. So,
but really, all of that big sequence at the end was written on the Thursday of the second last week. I can remember.
Yeah.
I remember learning it.
Yeah. I remember you trying to convince everyone it was really working, and Mark and I just cooked it up, and we were sitting there playing it thinking, I'm not sure, but you convinced us, Tom. So.
Good.
The laptop I'm speaking to on right now is the tablet I bought specifically because of the rehearsal process at Bristol, because we use so much paper we actually got rid of at least a spinny's worth of paper because it was rewritten so much. I thought I've got to move to digital and have all my scripts on a tablet now, and that's solely down to how much it changed during the rehearsal process.
Cool. Sean, you've still got sound disruptions, so Jack behind the scenes is going to try and talk to you on a phone or something to sort that out.
Okay.
But meanwhile, Vicky and Lizzie, what was it like for you guys watching this version, having seen the other version 4 or 5 times?
It was strange, really. I found they were obviously, like, you see the show so many times, you pick up on little bits that you missed the first, second, or third, or fourth time. But this show, like, there were elements that I saw, that little scenes and little moments that I thought it surprised me, but in a good way. I thought, that was a nice touch there. Like, there was one example, and it was when David and Osric just had that little moment together, because that was something that they were in the London show, and that just sort of made me go, oh, this is different. I like this. So there's some bits that I found in the Bristol that I really enjoyed, and I kind of wish I'd saw that one bit in the London. Although the London one was amazing, but
that little scene cut in order to make it shorter for London. That's got quite a big response on social media, I'm told. But Vicky, what about you? What did you think?
Well, I've done an English lit dissertation on disability in literature and theatre, so me and my family are used to tracking stuff throughout shows and being sort of like, we can use this. So when we noticed, for example, that Grinpayne takes off the scarf a lot more in the Bristol version than he does in the London version, my boyfriend was all going, he's taking off the scarf, and I was like, it's okay, we don't have to track this one, it's okay. But it was quite nice noticing exactly what was different. But that was the main one that stuck out to everyone in my family, was taking the scarf off a lot more in this one.
The Bristol Grinpayne just loves to strip.
More naked. Look, we've got wonderful hundreds of questions, so I'm going to start feeding them in. So Riz says, a friend of mine who couldn't make it to the Zoom chat would like to know why we changed the story's ending from what was in the book. Carl Grose, that's one for you.
Well, the ending in the book is a real downer.
Everyone dies, don't they?
Everyone dies. So it's a bit kind of Romeo and Juliet. So but basically, in a nutshell, Dea thinks that she's lost Grinpayne, or Gwynplaine, as he's known in the book much more, to the world of the court, and so she throws herself into the Thames and drowns, which is where the book is set in London. And then Grinpayne finds out and does the same. So we thought about it and then thought, no, come on, let's let these young people, fly. Let's give them an upending, Let's
give them a future.
Let's give them a future. We want to sell some tickets. So
Louis, there's a fascinating question for you from Emma Clasby, who says, how were you able to act in pain for the entirety of the show? I'm in the torture scene in 1984, and I need some help in how to really show that I'm in a lot of pain. Also, do you have any other advice for aspiring actors in high school?
How to act in pain? I guess
I'll shut up. You go.
Yeah, no, I guess again, it's to do with sort of mapping out certain parts of your body and isolating them and using them to sort of portray the pain. And I think as soon as you sort of concentrate on certain parts, it becomes a lot easier than sort of, I guess, just sort of doing an overall sort of blanket sweep of this is what pain is like. I mean, it's difficult to sort of, I think that's probably
a good answer.
Also asked us to punch you every time before the show so that you would filled with bruises.
That is true, yeah. That
and
is true,
sing Top Seas.
Yeah. Well, that is actually that is painful. That is really painful.
Water to your eyes.
Rebecca Holden says, is there a possibility of the Grinning Man returning to the stage? To which the answer is, if there is enough of a public outcry, yeah, sure. Then Emma Clasby asked about the instruments used in the show. and Mimi Brown asks about the unique sound in the score and what was the writing process like and which songs were easiest and hardest to write. So Tim and Mark, talk about the orchestration a little bit and also which songs were easiest or hardest to write.
Should we start with the orchestration?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we were using we had kind of couple of synths, kind of original synths that sort of.
Yeah, we had a mono synth, which was it's called a Gen in Italian mono synth, which sounds a bit like a theremin. And that was all based around a particular musician that we wanted to use in the show, who was very good on these particular instruments, and we just felt that including him would evoke the circusy atmosphere really effectively. So he had three different.
Steve Barker brought his hurdy-gurdy with him, didn't he? I mean, in a way.
We were sort of engaging. There was a sort of classical element to it, mixed with a kind of medieval futurism. So we were going slightly Clockwork Orange with it. We had a hurdy-gurdy, and Stu Barker also had a dulcimer.
Yeah.
Or was it?
And a trombone.
Yeah, and a trombone.
Yeah.
So I think the sort of inspirations, I think we were sort of quite inspired by the idea that this was we'd always talked about this as a parallel universe in which, instead of being steampunk, it was medieval punk, I suppose, of some kind, orchestrally.
Yes, and that we like to use, you don't want to be limited by instruments that were sort of period instruments. I mean, we'd already cracked the story and turned it into a fairy tale, so it felt logical for the music to have its own sort of a world of its own as well. And I think that came about a bit from our previous collaboration, Mark, which was very just every instrument in the kitchen thrown into the sink sort of thing.
Yeah.
We had a sort of mania about it. So.
I think our approach is that we tend to throw a lot at the wall and then see what sticks, and then make sense of it. In terms of the songwriting, I think we had a similar approach, because Tim and I spent some time in Sicily together, and various other places, where we actually we lock ourselves away. Watched a lot of Twin Peaks and spent the days just writing completely freely and sporadically. Then we sort of brought a sound palette and discussed it with Tom and Carl, started to work out what might work where. That was at the beginning. And then, as Tim said, as we got into rehearsals and we were just under a lot of pressure to write, the music, I think, is a very good way of putting it, was just sort of magnetically drawn to character. Just sort of, they seem to emerge out of character. But I think the most difficult thing wasn't so much in the writing of the songs, but in the piecing, the sort of geometry of putting them together, especially in the sort of the big second half set pieces.
Although I think the songs for Dea and Josiana were the most, challenging to write, and went through the most iterations as well, just because the story kept changing, for one thing, and also we had. I think, after reading the book, it was quite clear we felt that we had sort of agreed on the musical tone of Grinpayne, but I think we probably spent less time thinking about the other characters. So
we agreed that we were going to adapt this book quite a long time before any of us had actually finished the book, didn't we?
Yeah. Well.
Some of us have finished it, apparently.
I read it.
I just want to say one other thing, which is, Carl might bear me out on this, but this is very unusual, this musical, because really the world and quite a lot of the writing, the design, the style, the feel of it was all really from the music. It was the music that told us what sort of world we were in, which is quite unusual. It feels to us very visual music, I think. So thanks, Tim and Mark. Now, look, there are 61 questions in the panel, so I'm not going to be able to get through all of them. I'm going to try and lump some of them together. But thank you, everyone, for the wonderful things that you're saying. There are several questions, including from Jake Gibbons and several others for you, Audrey, about your character. Also, Scarlett is asking about this, and playing someone who can't see, and how you approach that.
I took my glasses off during the rehearsal process. No, it was really interesting actually, because we played with the idea that Dea was blind but was feeling thoughts and feelings with her hands, and so there was this other aspect to her. The sensory aspect was heightened because she was blind, and I don't know, she's been blind all her life, and so that's the only way that she knows how to experience the world, and so you're not going to be too hesitant. She developed a physicality, I guess. The contact lenses helped to really make me blind on stage. I couldn't see much. But no, it was a great journey, and a bit like Louis was saying, it was all about trying to find the physicality of it and balancing, you know, the truth of it, not to play a caricature of a blind person, which I think was the trick. Don't know if I did. I don't know.
Good. There's lots of questions about playing in a mask, and there are other also questions about playing in big costume and what that was like. I don't know whether, Gloria, you want to talk a bit about your costume.
my beaver, my otter dress.
Yeah, oh, it's an otter. Yeah, it's an otter.
Cages. Yeah. I mean, yes, big costumes. Well, they certainly make you wider than you are, which means other people have to kind of be a bit further away. They're kind of fun. Actually, I found, well, a lot of the cages that Josie had were sort of quite light, so it just made me wider, but they're really fun because it meant that everything that I did in circles, and she is a bit like that. So I found that a lot of her movement was always going in a circular way, because that's how kind of, you know, mad she is. Well, you know, but not by choice, that's just how she grew up. But I think that was the sort of main goal for me with that costume in particular. The otter stuff, I mean, yeah, it's heavy.
Was it heavy? Yeah, I was going to say, was it heavy?
That's all I'm going to say. It was heavy.
And what about, tell us a bit about working with the mask and acting from the nose up.
Well, I mean, the Bristol mask was quite difficult because it was a lot heavier and not as sort of malleable. But before every performance, I would sort of look into the mirror and give my eyebrows and eyes exercises in order to portray emotions. So I would sort of give myself an emotion and then I would sort of try and do it. But I don't really move my face anyway. So having a mask wasn't as big a problem as people, I think. And my mouth is quite, I don't really move my mouth. So having a sort of having a tiny gap to sing through wasn't too difficult.
It was easy. It was all easy.
It was really easy, actually.
There are lots of questions coming in about the puppetry. And I want to say, actually, from watching the film, I might say that this film was done by Simon Cooper and his team. And originally we asked for a 4-camera capture just so we could see the show from all angles. And then they did, I think, a really clever edit. And because it was high definition, we're able to cut in really close to quite a lot of the shows, quite a lot of the scenes, making, tracking the emotional story. And also showing the puppetry in fantastic detail. And I've got to say, Audrey, Gloria and Louis, amazing precision in the puppetry. It really came up well in the film. Can you talk a little bit about working on it, and Sean playing against puppets as well?
Can I say first, Audrey, Louis, to myself, I'm really proud of us.
I know, because the moment in the snow.
And because I could feel their energy, because working so close together like that, it's a really tough thing to do.
So intense.
And to be in sync with just another person, 2 people is hard, but for 3 people to be together, working together like that is...
In fact, audience might not know that, Gloria, you were on the... You were in the team mostly on feet, weren't you? Which is incredibly precise.
And tallest person in the company.
Yeah, especially I was going to say when Gloria is such a tall person, to see her sort of splayed out on the floor working these feet was quite a sight.
Yeah.
Worth the ticket.
They saw it.
Yeah.
They saw it. So
Tim Caldwell and Toby Ollier, who directed the puppetry and designed the puppets, were incredibly rigorous, weren't they, about focus and rhythm and breath and where the puppets were looking. And it was, you know, it really, I thought you did brilliantly, guys, I have to say.
one of the things I would say about it that these guys wouldn't know is that obviously you see what we had choreographed for the show, but a lot of our playtime before performances would be the three of us would get our hands on our puppets and we would, can you remember? And we would just, we would like run, like warm up would be us with Grinpayne and Dea running around and the stage and climbing up the rigging. And
we did Bikram yoga one day.
We did
as Grinpayne.
We did Bikram, we did. So there's a lot, you know, we truly became like that puppet, which is so.
At the risk of sounding pretentious, you know, someone who had to play opposite the puppets for the most part of the show. I was only an honorary puppeteer, a very small moment, but I genuinely, I would get off stage and never realize that I wasn't actually performing to a real child or a wolf, you know. And that is testament to, you know, what you guys did. You absolutely blended into the background for me. I never looked in your eyes. I looked into Child Dea's eyes, Child Grinpayne's eyes, and Mojo. You know, and it's sometimes. I mean, when the run got longer, and you know, I would have those, as we all do, those lapses of concentration. Sometimes I go, "Oh my God, there's Gloria. There's Louis."
No, I never had a lapse in concentration, Sean. I literally I don't know what you're talking about. But...
We'll talk about that later, dear.
I just want to give a special shout out to Alice Barkley and Stuart Angel, who were
they were on the wall. Absolutely.
In terms of puppetry, the first time I saw the children, I was watching it because I'm awestruck by puppeteers and what they can do. And after the show, I was thinking to myself, those child actors are going to go really, really far. Hang on a second, they were puppets because it was that convincing. I was like, oh my goodness. So very well done.
Excellent. Yes, Vicky, do jump in, by the way, if you have anything to say. I don't mean to. Are you a fan of the puppetry?
Yes, we actually did know Toby from his previous work on Warhorse as well. So when I saw his name, I was like, right, we need to go. My mum was like, yeah, okay. And then after she saw Mojo for the first time, she was a bit like, was that? No. Was that? No. And she only had like 5 minutes throughout the show. She was like, no, that's not actual. They haven't got that. No, they haven't. I was like, no, Mum, stop it. It's okay, fine. I am that person on Twitter who has a tattoo of Mojo on the back of my leg as well. So that was.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah, that is me. Yeah, mostly because I showed that clip of Mojo in the trailer to my boyfriend. He was like, right, we need to see it now, and we don't even date like a month. So he was like, we need to see it now. I don't care. We need to see it now, and he's still here. That's fine. So I credit Mojo with that.
So there are lots and lots of questions about whether we're going to do it again live. The honest answer is thank you for saying all these lovely things that you're saying in the question boxes. We don't know, but you know that we can't ignore the energy and passion that we're hearing from you guys for the show. And the answer is, if we can put together an investment to do it, then we will. So stay in touch with us, and if you want to find out more, you can email Bristol Vic and I'll let you know.
I mean, it has become a cult show, hasn't it? We do have a cult following. There's no question about that. Yeah.
And there are also lots of questions about working on the show and the changes that we made between London and between Bristol and London, and adapting it. Why did we make the changes we made, and what was it like? What was the process like? So I'm going to throw that one over to you, Carl, who's in the middle of all of that stuff.
Changes between Bristol and, well, I mean, there was a number of specifics that we changed. So the book is originally set in London, but we wanted to set it in its parallel universe, and so we made Bristol the capital city. So there was a load of stuff like that was specific to the show that we altered for London, or London as it became known. Then there was just a lot of stuff that we, you know, having seen it as many times as we did in Bristol, that we wanted to change and tighten up, and that was the thing. It was, I mean, great seeing the Bristol one again. It's great and kind of rough, and it's got a brilliant energy to it. But I think we knew we had to make it, we had to make some cuts and tighten it up. So that was the process that we kind of went through in terms of almost remaking it. I think we had the same amount of time, didn't we, to put it back up.
We had a slightly shorter rehearsal process, but
yeah.
we did essentially, the received wisdom was that it had to be shorter, and that made us work to make the story a bit tighter as well in London, we think. But there are some very weird bits, like what do we call that scene, the sort of slightly erotic scene between Osric and Dirimois.
Well, it was the kind of it was the
awakening,
sort of the come down scene, wasn't it? It was
it was the come down.
Woodstock,
Woodstock, it was the Woodstock scene.
We had to get rid of that, and we also, I saw on social media people were really enjoying the Julian's reprise of "Only a Clown" in that little duet with you, Louis. It was very lovely. But,
it's weird seeing those bits, because you know why you made those. We know absolutely why we took those things out. But then you see them again, you're like, oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? That was the question I was going to ask all you guys. Is now, having seen the Bristol one again, what would you keep again? Because certainly that little duet, that's a beautiful moment between Julian and Louis. And also Julian's puppetry. I just sat there and pissed myself laughing watching that. I just thought it was beautiful. I'd keep that. I'd get that back in.
I think Julian's puppetry needs to be released as just a little perfect.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, he has his own sort of late time show.
Yeah. I just want to tell the whole world about this puppetry moment where it was a weekend, and I think we had some plan organized to just do something fun in Bristol, and Julian cancelled at the last minute because he wanted to work on his puppetry moment in the show. And on Monday, when we came back in the rehearsal room, he prepared, like he made the puppets, and he just,
some of them ended up on stage, the ones he made
in the first preview. It was still the head. They were that shark.
Those shark
the shark heads.
But I said to Julian, I did say to Julian, why don't you film yourself at home, talking about how you preferred the Bristol version to the London version, and we use it on social media, and you could be in costume. And he said, no, I can't do that. And I said, why not? And he said, because Barkilphedro doesn't live where I live.
They are the same person.
Okay, so we've got hundreds of questions. Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in? So there's some questions about the Conrad Veidt film and whether that was an influence. This is a silent movie called The Man Who Laughs. I have to say it was quite reassuring from a writing point of view, wasn't it, Carl? Because that made us, our story isn't really like that story, but it did make us think it might be possible to tell the story within a single day, because the book is literally 800 pages. But what about you guys, performers? Did you draw any inspiration from that film, or Tim or Mark?
Well, we didn't, did we, Mark? I remember we watched it and felt it wasn't very useful, I guess. But I mean, musically speaking, it just didn't.
Yeah. I definitely used it in terms of it being a silent movie and having to sort of portray emotions that I couldn't necessarily say, or that people that 50% of my face would not be able to convey.
And you did have such a beautiful physicality. I keep using that word today, I'm so sorry. But you did, like when you were saying how, you're not very demonstrative with your face, but your body, I'd forgotten how you move so well and so much. It's like it's all in like the tip of your fingers. It was just
I also
Jane Gibson.
Yeah, especially in Freak Show.
Jane Gibson. She did the movement. Sorry, Gloria.
No, I was saying, especially in Freak Show, I sort of was transported back to being on stage as Jojo, And the more your body became more alive, it was just like, oh my God, show me a face. Like I wish my brother was in here because I was actually going, show us a face. And he was like, oh my God, you're so weird. But I remember that it was because it was your physicality that did that. It was so exciting. Very talented.
Thank you.
You're very talented, Louis.
Don't tell him that.
My head is literally, I can't.
Yeah.
You can't
You're watching. There are lots of lovely questions about, the kind of whether we anticipated that it would be a bit of a cult show or, resonate so much with audience. The answer is, you never know how a piece of work will be taken up by an audience, but it might be interesting to ask Vicky and Lizzie about what is it do you think about this show that has made it that some audiences absolutely love it and sort of take it to heart and kind of make it their own. What do you think it is that made you do that?
I think it's because the characters, we relate to the characters so much. I mean, in my experience, that's how I felt, because these people aren't they're different. They're considered different to other people, and they're outsiders. They're freaks. So like in my life, obviously I've experienced similar, not obviously not exactly the same thing, but a similar experience like that, and you feel that connection straight away that these people don't belong, so that they've got their own family, so we're part of that family. So it creates an even wider family, and it's just incredible to watch. Again, like, I can't really put it into words, but it just makes me feel like part of a family. So I'm very grateful for that.
I was going to say, like, even though I have the exact same feeling also from a theatre fan's point of view, for me, when I saw it in London, between the puppetry and, as we talked about with Louis' acting as well, I mean, everyone's acting, but especially with Louis' voice and the mask and everything, it was sort of just like what theatre could actually do. I know that sounds quite silly, but in terms of the music and the puppetry all coming together, it was sort of mind-blowing in terms of, oh, okay, this is really good. I cannot believe how good this is. But a funny little thing that I always had was, my family are from Bristol, so we still call it home, but even though I saw it only in London, specific songs like Beauty and the Beast still remind me of Bristol. I know it sounds really weird, I can't quite describe it. It was quite funny how they sort of like captured Bristol for me. I know that sounds really weird, but that's just sort of like little personal thing. Even though I never saw it in Bristol, it still reminds me of being such a Bristol show, as well as in London as well. But yeah.
Good, thank you. I mean, it is interesting because the outsider aspects of the story, I think, is something that, to look at us, this may not surprise you, all the creative team felt quite strongly. And we actually talked about the classic film Freaks, didn't we, quite early on, before we knew we'd even come across this title. There's something.
And I've still got your copy of the Todd Browning book Freaks.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl, sorry. Yeah.
Carl, do you want to add anything to that?
Harking back to the silent movie as well. I think when I sort of reading the book, the thing that struck me, I mean, the book is one of the big differences of the book is that Hugo wrote it as what he called a historical romance. So I think the initial thing that we all felt was moving it towards a fairy tale, and also what I took from the Paul Lenny silent movie is that sense of it being a kind of story of a monster. And again, Hugo kind of nails this brilliantly, that we all have, I think, profound feelings, kind of inside us, feelings of feeling like you're an outsider or not a part of something, feeling sometimes monstrous. Maybe it's just me, I don't know, but something about that, that character in Grinpayne and his sort of his quest kind of pulled all that together for me. And the brilliant thing is that that was the thing for me that I was so taken by and moved by, was that this strange story found its as Lizzie says, found its family. And it's that's the thing I'm most proud of. It's a sort of monster movie that everyone's taken to their hearts.
And do you know what, as an actor, that the gift of the show, I think, for I know for me personally, but I think perhaps other people, other cast members would agree, is that it allowed also a freedom to sort of the story itself, and then what you guys wrote and put together, and then what we collaborated with, allowed us a sort of freedom to kind of really push boundaries within ourselves as performers, and within ourselves as people, you know. And I think, especially for me, I found that, you know, playing a nymphomaniac who's having an incestuous relationship with her brother, like, you know, whoa, that's a lot. And how do you comprehend all of that? But I think there's something about the freak that's in me that was enabled to come out because of the story and because of how we put it together. I don't know. And I think that's what it offers a gift. And I think because we're experiencing that as a company, the show is saying that. And of course, anybody that comes and sits in that auditorium and watches it is going to feel that energy and feel the openness of that as well. You know, that spiritual.
It was a completely collaborative experience, and it's something I'd not witnessed for a long time. You know, having done a lot of the big kind of West End shows, you know, where you're dictated to, you know, you stand on number 4, you deliver this line this way and whatnot, you know, to kind of go into the Bristol Old Vic and just have someone say, okay, what do you think this character is? How are we going to develop this with you? And we all got that from Tom, you know. It was just such a wonderful way to work. And, you know, also, and as Tom says, you know, for me, it was the music that drew me to this piece originally. I thought, God, this is so extraordinary, you know. And to have that, you know, certainly my lullaby, it was almost, once we got into the rehearsal room, written, once Tim and Mark had listened to my voice, they sort of went, okay, there are things we can do with this voice, you know, and it was created around that as well, you know. It was such the most collaborative experience, artistic experience, that I will never forget. And you know, it's, and I thank you all for that. And I've not had too much wine.
You could do that thing of holding that last note of the lullaby the first time round, and then just introducing the vibrato just over that last. Come on, hats off. Now look, there's lots of questions about the experiment we did with Andy Serkis in the CGI capture. The answer to that is, people are asking, is anything going to happen to that? We don't know. There are some changes at Magic Leap, who sponsored it, going on. So they're not spending any more money on that kind of thing at this point, but the Imaginarium still has the full bottled capture. And Andy is still looking for ways in which he might be able to exploit it, but we don't have any more news than that. And there are also questions about the design, which is extraordinary. Now, John Borza isn't here, but if you're in the room, John, just say hello say something through the Q&A panel. He might or he might not be. But the design is a very special part of the show. And the great thing was that John was in the room in the workshops before we even got into rehearsal. So he, like Carl and I, was responding to the music and building a world that he felt could hold score with such an extraordinary atmosphere. And it's very hard to do this, actually, to get a creative team to, we were lucky enough to do 2 workshops, I think 2 short workshops in the National Theatre Studio while we were working on the writing, and get Finn and Toby, who did the puppetry, and John into the room. And it does give you that sort of support, that sort of time with the creative team, means that you can get to a density of collaboration which you just can't in a normal process. So hats off to John. Anyone want to add anything about the design? A nice hat off, Tim.
No, I thought his design was inspired over and over again. Actually, he kept coming in with new things, and when he arrived with the what was that thing called? The giant head.
Yeah. Oh my
Helium.
God.
Oh, yeah.
Helium.
It was just like one Christmas after another with him. Coming at 6 in the morning, and John's there spray painting this massive head for the theater, and he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna try this out today."
I do remember actually when Stuart Neal, who played Dirimois in Bristol, brought his baby backstage.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I thought it'd be a really good idea to wear the big head and go up. It's not, it was such a bad idea. That child.
Poor child.
The child is never recovered. So Audrey, a question for you. What's your favourite line in the show?
Sorry, man.
Well, my favorite line of the show was removed from the London run, so I was very pleased to. You didn't cut my face.
Yes. We love that.
That was no, I saw that. Anyone else got a favourite line? People are asking about favourite lines in the show.
Yeah, the one that was cut actually is Julian. It's a smile, and the world smiles with you.
Yeah,
I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that, team. That you're just saying we cut all the best lines when we do the show. How did the artistic team come together? That is an interesting question. It's slightly random, but probably it's Battersea Arts Centre, isn't it? The core of it, because I was working there. Tim was part of a company called Filter, and the company was making out just beginning their careers really in the Battersea Arts Centre. And I think that Mark, I don't know how you were in the Battersea Arts Centre. I think it's because some actor or other had heard you playing in the room above his flat and brought me a tape of something you'd written. Is that right?
That's right. Tim Walker.
Tim Walker and Carl was in Knee High, who were hanging around the Battersea Arts Centre.
Tim and I had also
at that point.
Yeah,
so,
Tim and I had also started.
Doing Burn Me Dead.
Doing Burn Me Dead. Yeah, we started doing a loose adaptation of The Master Margarita. We did a run at the Battersea Arts Centre, and I think it's that caught your attention.
Yeah. So and then I'm going to try and share out the questions a bit more. Okay, long question from Frederica Bodman. Question for Carl. I know it's been mentioned how much of the Grinning Man aesthetic has come from the music, but something I adore about Carl's work is that all of his pieces seem to create their own small world or universes. I just want to ask if he had a vision of this universe before the music and just pretended not to have a vision of it until he heard it.
That's a great question.
There were things before the music that made their way. I'm actually, everyone's laughing because I'm changing the question a little bit to make it harder for Carl. Anyway, you get the gist of it. Carl, what's the answer?
Yes, luckily my small universe fitted with Tim and Mark's small universe. I mean, I suppose the thing that I really love doing is doing exactly that, creating a world, and the theatrical worlds I like to write are filled with strange and weird and wonderful characters, and so the when I read the book, like I said before, it's a kind of quite, it's not naturalistic in any way, but it certainly isn't the fairy tale world that is in the book. But really a response from the characters. I love characters that are extreme and kind of expressionistic, and I certainly, a lot of the stuff I've done with Knee High has been kind of folktale born, through to stuff that isn't folktale, like the Tin Drum and all that. But it's it was just something about the book that fitted with what I kind of knew I could do it. Do you know what I mean? And I loved Grinpayne and I loved Dare. I loved the characters and the world. We just had sort of fun pushing it off into we once we got rid of the historical, it's set then. We just, it was just great to fill the world with oak smoked otters and strange clowns and and all that kind of stuff. All the stuff I love, really.
And I just want to say I've had the fortune to be in 3 of Carl's shows.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
which one's the best?
Well,
Yeah.
it's so hard. It's amazing the world that he kind of throws you into, and he gives you all the tools to as Gloria was saying earlier, to push yourself, outside of your comfort zone, and so yeah, you're crazy, Carl, and we love you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very, very
I
good.
don't think I'll ever get to eat otter. Like literally, I don't think I'll ever get to eat otter in any other show ever again.
You never know.
Yeah.
There's a question.
Louis, when
do another one. Do another one.
Of you
Yeah,
eating
do another
otter?
one. And there's a question for me, which is about casting. I'll throw this open in a minute, but it's essentially how much work do I expect people to do before rehearsals and things like that. The interesting thing is that for a show like this, in the casting process, you're actually looking for people who can create their characters, because it was clear from the offset that we needed, well, basically it was clear that we had quite a lot of writing and shaping to do, which turned out to be the case. And therefore we were only going to get through it if everyone was absolutely creating their own characters. And that's what happened. And that's why I think the production has got so much character in it, because you all did it. And the writing team, as Sean was saying, musically as well as in the text, responded to what you did. And it is also fair to add, isn't it, Carl, that quite a lot of the text, quite a lot of Julian's text was written specifically for him, because we got him into an early workshop, didn't we? And then you were able to be writing for Julian.
Well, I mean, that was, I'll just try and be really quick with this, but that was really bizarre, because I had seen Julian, as many people had, in Shock-Headed Peter many years before. And as many people had sort of fallen in love with him, and I'd met him a couple of times before and always had him in my mind to, I always thought I'd love to write something for Julian Bleach, but that will never happen. And I used to write characters that would go, oh, Julian Bleach would be great for this. I had it always him in mind. And I did for Barkilphedro without knowing, as memory serves, that, you just got him in for the first read through. So in he came and started reading Barkilphedro, and it was like, oh my God. And, it's just watching the show today was still amazing. I can't believe I've written the great Julian Bleach.
That was quite a gauntlet thrown down to Mark and I, because you found that characterization through and with Julian so early on that it was then imperative on us to create a Grinpayne that could be this sort of Luke Skywalker to his.
Yeah.
Because he was so in that character, it was.
Yeah, and I couldn't stop writing Barkilphedro, could I?
Yes, and that's when we found Louis Maskell, one of 2 people in the country who could actually sing the notes.
2.
The other one, Tim.
I mean, we should say, I know we are, by the way, ladies and gents, wherever you are at home or wherever you are, we are going to wind up fairly soon, just to give you a little bit of warning, because we've been going for an hour, but there's so many questions and it's so wonderful. But Tim and Mark, I mean, Louis' voice in terms of its range is very, very unusual, isn't it? So people might not know that technically. Can you give us some sort of indication?
I think when we wrote The Labyrinth, to be perfectly honest, I don't think we were being particularly kind or humane. And we were very lucky to find Louis. I think it was one of those. I think Tim has an incredible range, and so often we paint ourselves into a corner by working with Tim's natural range and then finding no one else can sing it. And then Louis appeared.
Well, except I wasn't the other one, by the way, but I actually I don't have Louis' range. He's got about 5 notes further than.
Well, no one has Louis' range, not even Louis.
And there's a lovely question. It's a lovely question to Audrey, Louis, Gloria, and indeed Sean. Just ask, what did you learn from your characters?
Oh.
Well, you can have a little think about
do you know what? Now, I was thinking about this about Josie. I would say that that any change that you want to make within yourself is possible, and that no matter what your circumstances are, where you come from, or why that's where you come from, hers is obviously quite a broken home, and she's misunderstood and is allowed to get up to, she's never really told no. So she's always just does what she wants and finds herself in things that she shouldn't really be doing. And that makes her seem like a kind of mean, horrible, nasty person to some, and perhaps to herself. And I think when playing Jojo, I always felt like she doesn't really like herself very much. She doesn't really enjoy herself very much. And that changes. I think I remember when we did the transformation bit after the riverbank scene, and we were all just sort of like, we've got to get this right. We've got to get this right. And the music, the whole thing, that whole moment. And I think I remember thinking, wow, that's amazing that it is possible. She suddenly in that one moment believed in herself. So yeah, I think that's for Jojo. I think that's it, even though she's barking mad, but yeah.
For me, it's as a man in real life who's never had any paternal instinct whatsoever, no interest in children whatsoever. I was genuinely emotional on a nightly basis, and Louis and Audrey will testify to this. You know, it was a hard thing to kind of stop the tears. You know, when I left them to go into the audience. You know, and that's what theatre is for me. It's in real life, I'll never have children. I don't want them, and that's as close as I'll get to seeing my children off into the sea. And it was a really emotional thing, you know.
Lovely. Audrey or Louis, do you want to add anything?
Dea loves. She loves, and she understands that love is beyond herself, and so there's no selfishness about it, and that she's willing to let go of the person that she wants to be with because he's happy. And so yeah, I'm still learning, but
yeah. I think to value the people around you, and to value your family, because I feel like Grinpayne is always sort of on this emotional quest to sort of find the truth, and sort of he's in some ways quite selfish, and so the conclusion of the show and of his sort of journey, I think, is something I definitely can glean from and learn from, and did learn from, in terms of sort of really being happy with what you've got.
Beautiful. Well, we should draw to a close. There are many questions we haven't been able to answer. But Mimi Brown, your question: how does it feel to realise how many lives you've touched with this show? I mean, I just have to say it's very overwhelming. It's an overwhelming thing. And it's one of the things that, I miss most about live theatre not being here, is you don't get to see the audience responding in the moment. Nick Hart, to answer your question, I'm afraid there's a pact among the lyricists. We will never reveal who wrote the line "Hubert and his anal snake."
We got away with that. Again, it's like, how did we get away with this?
So I think we have to we have to say goodbye to you all and thank you. I do just want to give a little bit of a round of applause from those of us on the screen. First of all, for the whole team at Bristol Vic who produced the show, Catherine Morgenstern, Chloe Elwood, and everyone who worked on it the first time round. Really, thank you. You carried us. And also to the digital marketing team. This is the 5th of our streams, and Jack and Caroline and Tundan, when she's off furlough, have been working absolutely round the clock to put this together. So a little bit of thanks to them. Let's all clap. And lastly, and most importantly, thank you to all of you in your bedrooms or kitchens or hallways or wherever you are, for pretending to go to the theatre with us this evening and asking so many brilliant questions. So we're going to end by giving you a clap and then somehow the screen will disappear magically, and it'll be as if we were never there.
Wonderful.